Let's talk synthol. Is it safe? Should you use it? Stay tuned. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, we have you covered. We're going to start with the 2 questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Question about bent over rows and whether it's better, or rather, if there's any benefits to using a reverse grip when doing bent over rows.
You know, everyone always used an overhead grip and rode this way, until the only person I've ever seen do it, the reverse grip, was Dorian Yates. At least that was the first person I've seen do it. And Dorian had the most outrageous back development of all time. There might not be a better back in bodybuilding than Dorian's. I mean, Ronnie was good, and Joel Stubbs had a really good back, but Dorian's was just dense, and so everyone wanted to know what this guy was doing. He was doing reverse grip, bent over rows, reverse grip. And so everyone started doing him that way because Dorian did him that way. And then Dorian tore his bicep doing it that way. And so he stopped doing it underhanded and started doing it overhanded. And then I think a lot less people started doing it. It took a while, but a lot of people, eventually changed back to the overhand, because the overhand position protects your biceps. You're not really engaging the biceps as much as when you hold like this. It's easier that you can potentially pop a bicep. You do feel it a little bit more in your back when you do this kind of a grip. But over the years, I would go back and forth. Bent rows was never an exercise that I used an enormous amount of weight on, because I felt like when I would do a lot of weight with that I didn't really engage. I stopped engaging the back, and I started cheating a lot more, like traps and rear delts, and you want to really engage the back. Dorian legitimately could do 405 bent over rows, and he was really working his back. I think a lot of people I've seen do heavy bent over rows, but I don't really feel they're using their back muscles, and they don't even have a good back to show for it. So the weight is not as important as the technique. Nowadays, I'll do 185, and that feels super heavy for me, but I really feel it in my back, and I do overhand just because I don't want to risk injury. But I think it's okay if you do on it, especially if you're using straps or grippers. It's going to kind of protect, because you're not really pulling from your arms, you're pulling from your back. But like I said, if you want to be super cautious, I don't see there's being any negative to doing an overhand grip. It's probably safer.
We talked about, we haven't really touched the topic in quite some time, and that is synthol. More specifically, the safety nature, or how safe it is for you with extended usage. At some point, synthol breaks down into your bloodstream. So the question is it actually safe? And then I'll add to that extended use versus short-term use for synthol.
Right. I used to sell it because the first synthol I ever produced was by Chris Clark, who was a good friend of mine from Germany, and he passed. And then Steve DeLuca had a really good brand, which was Painless Pumps, and I had that for a while on my Dave Palumbo site. And that's he passed away as well. So there are still brands out there that are available. And what synthol essentially is, it's the oil without the drug. Now, there are other components of synthol. The real synthols that actually do something have glycoproteins in there, because it's basically what it is it's a positive nutrient partitioning product. So you're putting nutrients directly into the muscle. Now, yes, you get a volumizing effect from the oil or the fatty acid component of the injection, but you're also putting protein in there. And so what it's causing is a hyper feeding response of the muscle, and it seems to have a localized muscle building effect over a long period of time. So initially you get that swelling, you get the volumization, which everyone loves, and then long term you actually get muscle building if the product contains, the right ingredients. A lot of synthol on the market is just basically sterile oil, or we hope it's sterile oil. So the question is whether you're using a real synthol product that actually has, long-term muscle building effects, or you're just using oil that's volumizing the muscle. Is it dangerous? Theoretically, it's not. I mean, assuming it's sterile, okay, and that's a big, in today's world, who knows if that's really the case. But if you got a product that is sterile, your body is technically using the fats that you're injecting in there as a fuel source. So nothing stays there forever. Okay. Now there might be products that have other crap in it, like silicone and, some of the stuff that Rich Piana used. But for most products, it's an oil-based product. And that just is, it's like putting fats into your body. Your body's going to digest those things and break them down. Now, if you're using excessive amounts of it, where it's not even staying in the muscle and it's going under the skin, and maybe you're getting infections, obviously that's not good for you, right? I mean, we saw Greg Valentino's arm when it exploded, right? I mean, it really didn't explode. What happened is he got a terrible abscess and that ruptured. So if you're not using sterile technique, if you're overdoing it, it absolutely could be dangerous, just like anything. If you put too much testosterone into your arms, or shoulders, whatever, we see abscesses and we see terrible stuff. Look, I've seen people literally lick the syringe, okay, because they used an old syringe and then injected it. I mean, back in the day, I swear to you some people are just not sterile. So assuming sterility is good, and assuming that you're, using a product that is sterile to begin with, I don't think there's any long-term, or even short-term negatives to using it, because there's no drug in it. You're not overdosing on a drug. You're just putting oil into your arm, like I said, or into whatever body part you're doing it in. Do I recommend you just use any haphazard, product out there, or make your own? Absolutely not. Are there some decent ones out there? There's still some good products out there. Armand DB has a product on his website that's pretty good. And there are a couple other ones out there that are reasonable. But once again, understand what you're doing. Don't overdo it.
And don't lick needles, kids. Interesting question here about dieting based off location. So the question is, does home state weather affect a bodybuilder's dieting strategy? Like, will a bodybuilder who lives in New York be more likely to bulk harder during the fall and winter when they're completely covered up, whereas a bodybuilder, say in Florida, California, might stay leaner year round?
Yeah, I don't know. It might be lifestyle. I mean, I think California people tend to eat a little healthier out there just in general. But yeah, I don't think it matters really, to be honest with you. I think what I found in New York was that we all stayed covered up in the winter because it was so cold, and we didn't really worry about what we looked like. Sometimes when you're in a state where you're in a t-shirt or tank top all the time, you might want to stay leaner just because people are looking at you more. I mean there could be that thing about it. But if real true hardcore bodybuilders don't give a crap about what people think about them. Now, in today's world with social media, there is this aspect of like, hey, if I post pictures and I look like a bag of crap, I'm not going to get as many followers. So a lot of people stay in better shape year round, possibly just to entice more people to come to their social media pages. So that's a possibility. I don't think the state you live in is really necessarily going to dictate how you look, or if you're fatter or skinnier. Maybe for the average person, obviously in Wisconsin, people are by definition not as lean as in Florida, or say California, because that's just the way the state goes. And there's a lot of cold weather there, and people figure, well, I'm covered up, no one can see me anyway. But I think for the bodybuilder, we kind of supersede that. I wanted to just mention also the questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. The first two questions were excellent, thought-provoking. These are the type of questions we get in the app. If you want to become a member of the Dave Palumbo Experience, you can download it from your Android or iTunes store. It's $29 a month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket. You get all my writings, all my videos I've ever done, all in one place, all my protocols drug protocols, off-season pre-contest, men, women. It's detoxification protocols, synthol protocols. Everything's there. And we do a Q&A every single week. So I do a separate video. It's almost like an extra Ask Dave just for the app members. Plus, I answer everyone's questions on the app that ask in an open forum, so everyone sees everyone's questions and everyone's answers. It's a great learning tool. We also put up a workout every week. It's a real great value for $29 a month. And if you Christmas coming up, the holidays coming up, you're looking to get stocking stuffers for your friends and loved ones. It's a great gift. Thank you. And thank you for supporting it, by the way. We have a lot of members, so appreciate that.
Well, I do also want to mention, we just talking about like, California, Miami, some of the different states. Well, we just put this video up last week. Dave was in California. He got to visit Gold's Gym Venice, go to the firehouse, just go around that area, eat at a couple of different
Never got in the
restaurants.
firehouse, but I did go by the firehouse.
But yeah, right. But anyway, go check that video out. Dave does go inside Gold's Gym Venice, meets a couple of characters. Tito Raymond was there as well. So very cool. I guess your fix of nostalgia for the old school bodybuilders. You did get a glimpse of that wall with the previous Mr. Olympia, so that was pretty cool as well. But anyway, check that out. That's live on the channel right now. Back to the questions. Injectable dianabol. Do you stick to the same dosage as the oral form? I've always liked 40 mg of oral dbol, but want to try injectable as well.
When I used the injectable dianabol back in the day, I would take 25 milligrams every other day, and that worked really well for me. Dankel used to make it. It was a really high-end brand. And it was, I knew the owner who made the stuff, and it was everyone used it back in the day. And I found that literally like 3 times a week, 25 milligrams. I felt crazy pumps on it. It did not affect my appetite one bit. And oral dianabol always kind of didn't kill my appetite, but it blunted it a little bit. The injectable I did get bloated on it. Was holding more water than normal on that product, but I was strong and I definitely liked it. I wish it was still around. I know some people still say they can get injectable dianabol, but I would highly recommend using that over the pills. And if it is available, I would consider that an acceptable anabolic. Like I always tell you to use testosterone with EQ or testosterone with DECA or testosterone with enanthate off season. Well, I would definitely do it if you have it available. I would do a testosterone with injectable dianabol, for like a 6-8 week mini cycle. I think you get some good results from that.
So earlier we had a question about synthol, and I guess the safety of, using it for extended usage and whether it's asleep in your blood. Site enhancement related. Are there any, I guess, quote unquote, Insta size products for upper chest and side delts that you would recommend?
Yeah, for deltoids, because you have to take your regular anabolic injections. I always told people that's an easy, place to put them, side delts. And when you do them in side delts, you want to kind of put it in the front part of the side delt. You don't want to put it toward the rear part because then it just doesn't look right. You want to have that capped front. So you can put your regular injections in the front part of the side deltoid. I think that's probably best to do there. As far as what was the other place you wanted to know about?
Upper chest and side.
Oh, upper chest.
Yeah,
I've told you guys this before. What I would do with my regular injections, if let's say I was going to take a cc of testosterone for the day, I was going to train chest that day, I would put like a half a cc in each upper inner pec, because that's the place most people are weak, right? Everyone wants to have that size right under their chin, with the pec. So I would put a half cc on each side, about a half inch in, and when I would go to the gym, and I don't think the actual drug was building any muscle in that area, but what it did was it created an inflammation and swelling in that area. So when I was train my chest, I would feel that area contracting better. So it gave me like a better mind muscle connection there, and I think that really helped me build that area, because that's a place that a lot of people just can't feel because it's so underdeveloped. But once you start feeling that area, you can squeeze it better when you're doing your and you don't want to take super wide grip. You want to take like a medium grip, so you hit more of the inner. The closer your grip goes, the more of the inner pec it's going to hit. The wider, the more of the outer pec it's going to hit. It's going to still hit the whole thing, but you can focus down where you want to kind of, direct it. And you don't need to put any more than that in there. You're not trying to volumize that area with a lot of volume, because otherwise it's going to look ridiculous. It's going to look lumpy. You're just putting a little bit in there to kind of get your mind connected to that area of your body so that you can train it better.
Question about carb cycling. Do you prefer to do it on a day basis, I guess day-to-day basis, or do you focus on specific days of the week to match the training? Example, 3 days low, 1 day high, or every Monday is a high day?
What I really do with a lot of my guys off seasons, I give them a standard amount of carbs to eat every day, whatever it is, depending on their metabolism. Let's say they're eating 250 grams of carbs a day, together with their 350 grams of protein and their 100 grams of fat, just for instance. And I feel that they're a little flat. Okay, they send me their updates because I take updates from my clients twice a week, usually, sometimes more. And I see, you know what, the person looks really flat and they're not really gaining weight. I'm like, you know what, they're probably not eating enough carbs. So I'll do a high day. So I'll say, all right, tomorrow we're going to do 500 grams of carbs. And then I'll get an update like a day or two after that and see how they look. Sometimes that kicks them into gear. It like reloads the glycogen in the muscles that were depleted, and they're fine. And I don't need to continue doing it. Other times I might get updates in 2 days and see, well, they look better. And then 2 days after that, they're flat again. So, well, you know what? I need to up their carbs daily. So instead of doing 250, I might do 275 daily. Some guys need a cheat meal every couple days. If their metabolism is really fast and I know the carbs that I'm adding in are not making it better, they still look the same, then they need a denser, junkier meal. So I'll give them a burger and fries, 8-ounce burger and fries, and see how they look the next day. And a lot of times that fixes the problem. And so some guys, I have to do that 2-3 times a week, sometimes more. So you have to kind of play around with what works. You can't just say knee jerk, all right, I'm going to give them this many carbs one day, the next day I'm going to do higher, and then I'm going to drop that. You play with them. I think a standard amount every day is better, because then you can just play with certain days of the week. Whereas if you're always varying the carbs, you don't really know what's working. All right, well, they look flat. Does that mean that I should raise the low day or give them another high day? It's like too complicated. I think if you have everything be pretty much set every day, and then you play with the days according to how they look, because sometimes you get it perfect. Like I give them a certain amount, I don't have to touch the diet at all. They're gaining consistently and they look good. They're full and not overly full. And so I'm like, hey, this is great. That's just the way I do it. I don't think you have to. I think when you start making things too complicated, it's hard to account for all the variables and to figure out what's working and not working. That's just me, though.
We have a lot of good questions here. We're only going to be able to take 2 or 3 more. Full disclosure, we're going to be recording after hours in less than 10 minutes. Do you measure your meats cooked versus uncooked? And does it make a difference if you're on prep?
Yeah, I would do cooked. So after you cook the food, then weigh out the portion size. Because I think if you're making red meat, a ground red meat especially, you lose a lot of weight when you cook it, because a lot of the fat, cooks off. If you're using a really lean piece of fish and you're only searing it like a piece of salmon, it's probably the same weight, So I always say, after you finish cooking it, weigh it. Now, then people say to me, oh, do I do that with carbs? Well, with carbs, it's different, because with carbs, you're basing it on the box. So if the box of rice says a half a cup uncooked yields a full cup cooked, and it's this many carbs, then that's what it is. It doesn't matter how much water you add to it. You're not weighing that out. You're doing it, according to what the box's directions are. Now, if you're going to use let's say a white potato, and we know white potato is about 4.5 grams of carbs per ounce, and you want 45 grams of carbs, you're going to use 10 ounces. After you cook it, it doesn't matter. You're just losing water. The carb content hasn't changed. So with a potato, you would weigh it before, okay? Whereas, because you're not really going to lose that much, but is the point I'm making. But with protein, and that's what most people are asking about, protein, you always weigh it cooked.
Question about torn muscles. I tore my chest about 8-9 weeks ago. All muscle and no tendon tear, but did lose a bit of fibers up by the shoulder on the side. So there's a little bit of chest missing altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Are these fibers, those specific fibers, are they gone forever, or can you grow some back?
Yeah, unfortunately, they're gone forever. Those fibers are. Now, what I noticed was when, because everyone gets little pec tears, along the way. And what I did notice is I had a very small little fiber tear, tiny, from pumping up backstage at a show, which is what stopped me from ever pumping up again. And it was a little bit of a divot in my chest. And then what I noticed is as I got bigger and more muscular, it didn't fill in, but my chest grew so much that it was negligent at that point. You know what I mean? You couldn't even tell because it just looked like a little natural indent in my chest. So even though those fibers won't come back, the other fibers will grow bigger to take up the job of the ones that tore. So if you increase the size of your chest, you probably will never see it again. You won't notice it.
Take one more question. Question is about DECA. I did a very small cycle, 50 mg of DECA a week for 4 weeks along my TRT of 175 mg a week. The goal was to help with my shoulder pain. But here is where the twist comes in. It did help, but since then I've been depressed and even had panic attacks. Can that be related to the DECA? And if so, can you suggest a solution? Does DECA have that kind of an impact even on a smaller scale dosage?
I mean, it really shouldn't. I think a lot of guys are so worried about DECA and getting DECA dick and having all these problems with DECA that they actually created in their head. But some are real. I know guys that could look at a bottle of DECA and they can't get an erection. So what I recommend is getting your prolactin levels checked. If you're too lazy to do that, get some cabergoline, also known as Dostinex, and try 0.5 milligram, 2 to 3 times a week. If that solves the problem, then it's probably just because you have high prolactin levels that are causing that. Obviously, the better way would be to get, blood work to see what your levels are and then respond to it. But, some guys are not going to do it. So, or they can't get a doctor to write a script for them to do it. So you can just try a little Dostinex and see if that fixes the problem. If it does, then it's a prolactin problem. If it doesn't, then more than likely it's probably not from the DECA, because that's the only thing the DECA can really do that these other drugs won't do is it can raise prolactin levels.
Take one more. It's from a good friend of the show, RPE. Question about milk. I'm a fan of milk, 2% in whole milk, or whole mix rather, for lots of reasons. I understand it's not favorable for those who are lactose intolerant. However, is it true that if it actually can cause an inflammation response in the muscles, similarly to how arachidonic acid does in red meat?
No, more than likely, dairy tends to inflame the gut. It's very irritating to the gut. And I don't know if it's because of the lactose itself or if just dairy in general. That's why we usually cut out dairy intake, pre-contest. I think it has something to do with the lactose is really what's causing it, because if you use like a really good whey isolate, you don't seem to get that gut inflammation. But you guys know what I'm talking about. You can eat some like cottage cheese. You can eat too much cheese or drink milk. Even if you can digest it, sometimes you get the sniffles, you get congested from it. That's what dairy does. Dairy has a congestive effect. And like I said, I really believe it's, a lot of the lactose in there. Milk was something we used in the 70s. Well, I didn't use it. I wasn't bodybuilding in the 70s, but they used it in the 70s and 80s because there really was no protein powders. Even the protein powders were just powdered skim milk with sugar in it. So they used that because it was a good source of protein, even though probably a lot of guys weren't digesting it well. There's no reason in today's day and age that you should have to drink milk. The whey isolates that we make today are so pure. They've removed so much lactose. I mean, Isolyze is the number one purest isolate on the market. Everyone knows that. It's a little more expensive than everyone else's, but if you have a lactose sensitivity and you use Isolyze, you're not going to have any problems because we've removed essentially every bit of lactose from that product. We never had that technology in the past. We couldn't filter it to that degree. Even when the first whey proteins came out on the market, they were whey concentrates. Designer whey protein was whey concentrate. It was 1,000 times better than what the powdered skim milks we were using before that. The Joe Weider dynamic muscle builder, but it had lactose in it. Now, I was young then when I was using it, so I was able to digest lactose. As I got older, I lost the ability completely, and I couldn't do anything. Like I couldn't use I couldn't use any whey concentrates. I couldn't drink any milk. If I drink a glass of milk, I will literally poop my pants. That's how bad it is because I can't digest it. I can only ferment that lactose. So it makes sense to not use milk in today's day and age. There's no reason for it. Now, cheeses and yogurts and stuff like that are kind of fermented a little bit. So a lot of the lactose has been digested by the bacteria that are in there, the good bacteria. So a lot of times you can get away with that. I can eat a little bit of cheese and a little bit of yogurt if I want to. I tend not to, just because it's not great for me and I can't do a lot of it, and I like the taste of it, and I want to eat. When I start eating it, I want to eat more. But those products are easier to digest, but pure milk is very bad for most people.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. By the time this goes up yesterday, we will have posted, or we'll have streamed live episode of After Hours. So check that out on the channel right now. Of course, all new episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. And then, of course, Dave's vlog from California, checking out Gold's Gym Venice, eating some good food, and just checking out California, that whole scene around Gold's Gym Venice. If you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below. And as always, we appreciate all of your support. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.